Welcome to episode 241 of thenecronoma.com.
You know what's really scary? Book bans. Long a tool of authoritarians, book bans are a direct threat to our freedom to read. That's why Library Foundation SD, Brooklyn Public Library, and other partners across the country have launched Books Unbanned to fight this evil. This campaign makes frequently banned or challenged books available through a digital catalog to young people across the U.S., including states with increasing book bans. Like your local library, it's completely free to sign up. Want to learn more, including how you can help increase access to the books we love? Visit libraryfoundationsd.org.
Fright Rags has been bringing you the best in horror apparel and accessories since 2003, offering a wide range of products for your favorite creature features, slasher flicks, and cult classics. Officially licensed collections include titles like John Carpenter's The Thing, The Evil Dead, Creepshow, Jaws, the Halloween franchise, and so many more. Head on over to fright-rags.com. Make sure to sign up for their SMS and email newsletter to never miss a drop. Listeners get 10% off when they use the code NECRO10, all caps, at checkout.
Ask not what you can do for your podcast, but what the podcast can do for you. Shit, I fucked that up.
I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. No, I'm not. I'm actually John Huffman, and I took James's spot, and he's out there somewhere in the world, not being himself anymore.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of the podcast. And when I was a teenager, I was in an iron lung.
Did the person in the iron lung know you were in there too?
Well, it belonged to the Iron Giant. So, I mean,
I had a giant peach, but that's for a different episode. So joining us today, Rebecca Cuthbert is back. Welcome back to the show.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You've been here a couple times now, knocked out some great episodes.
Thank you.
And I'll be honest, like, given your track record so far, when you said BUBBA HO-TEP, I was like, wow, this is going to be amazing. But I know a connection that most people wouldn't know yet. So we'll get to that in a second. First, Would you care to introduce yourself to our audience? Tell them all the 100 million things you have going on, and then we'll get to that connection.
Thanks. Yes. So my name is Rebecca Cuthbert. I'm the editor-in-chief of the brand new Undertaker books. We are a horror press, and we are so excited to just have put out our first couple of books. And we have a bunch more wonderful authors signed, so check us out on social media. Just look up Undertaker Books and you will find us.
Also a sponsor of Spirited Giving.
Oh, yes. And we are sponsoring Spirited Giving because it's a wonderful event. It's a wonderful charity, a great cause, and we are excited to be part of it.
And we're excited to have you. But continue.
In our limited way, because we wish we could be there for it, but we are just too far away. And I have a couple books out. I've got In Memory of Exoskeletons, which is a dark poetry collection with Alien Buddha Press. And that is up for an Imagine Award this year. And I've got Creep This Way, How to Become a Horror Writer with 24 Tips to Get You Ghouling from Seamus and Nunzio Productions. And in the fall, I will have a hybrid collection of feminist horror out called Self-Made Monsters. And that is also with Alien Buddha Press, with more titles to be announced. Contracts signed, but projects not yet public.
Cool. Very nice. So
I keep writing, and I have too many pets. Those are my personal facts.
So obviously Spirited Giving also has the anthology Shadows in the Stacks. All proceeds from that book also go to fund Books Unbanned, which there was an ad for at the beginning of this. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, you should listen to ads. What are you doing? Anyway, you have... I won't say that it's my favorite story in the book because, other authors might listen to this and a couple are kind of, violent only towards me. And Scott Bradley, I'm looking at you. And but no, seriously, this is the story that when I was editing with Jared Sage and Vincent Cava, I was going through a really bad depressionary stage. And this story just brightened my weekend. Like it pulled me out a little bit and I loved it so much. So could you tell people a little bit about the story and they will immediately see how that pulls into Bubba Ho-Tep?
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I'm really glad it cheered you up. And I got something in that round of editing that is better than any award ever. And it's that one of Vince's comments was just, Jesus Christ, Rebecca. And then there was a period. Just Jesus Christ, comma, Rebecca, period. And I was like, that's the best comment you can ever get.
I have never earned that from Vince, and he reads everything I write. I'm jealous. That is amazing praise. Continue.
So the story came from, I wanted to write horror comedy because I love horror comedy. I love really serious, sad stuff too, but I love horror comedy. And so when I was invited to the anthology, I was talking to my friend Jonathan Gensler, and he's firing ideas at me. And one of them was possessed dentures. And I was like, no. But then I was like, hang on, wait, maybe? Yes. And so I wrote it, and it needed help. It got a lot of help from you, James, and the other editors. And it got a lot grosser too, which I blame mostly James for. So it just kept getting grosser and grosser. It takes place at a nursing home. I love writing stories set in nursing homes. I have another one that is in Soul Scream Anthologine, The Quilting Circle of Bygone Gardens.
Fucking
so that is another nursing home
story.
story. That's a witch coven at a nursing home. So I'm pretty sure I'm never going to be done writing comedy horror set at nursing homes.
Nor should you be.
Nor should I.
Absolutely.
It's an untapped market. So I'm going to get all those people who are like, oh, you know what? I wish I had more nursing home comedy horror. I'm going to get them.
So what's the title of your story?
Again, this is James. This is your fault.
I was not fishing for compliments. I love this title though. Continue.
No, but it is your fault. So I feel this is kind of going to be a spoiler, but James, when we were in editing, James is like, "What if the teeth taste different?" And it was so gross, and so the title became "The Taste of Other People's Teeth."
Everybody who looks at the table of contents focuses on that title and they're like, what the fuck? And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what we were going for. The Taste of Other People's Teeth is one of my favorite titles ever. Another story in this book is also one of my favorite titles ever, which is Satanic Panic on Ice by William Sterling. And that one's like a kid's like the Wiggles, right? Having a concert, but then like their songs make kids do satanic stuff and kill their parents. So, but yeah, so I find it really funny that this anthology has two of my all-time favorite titles in it. And yeah, I love it.
Well, the story was a genuine collaboration between me and the editors. And I think that's the way it should be, you know?
I always feel that, like, not necessarily like you have to have a bunch of people do this, but I feel every story is strongest if multiple people have looked at it, given input, even if everything they say, you're like, no, at least you know why. Like not exploring those options. Like, I don't want you looking at your story 5 years later going, fuck, I didn't know that was an option. You know, I love that feeling. And content editing, like the bare basic content, like even before you knock out a first draft, is my absolute favorite thing. I love talking to authors and asking them questions about it and opening doors in their head and being like, now get the fuck out of here and go write your story. But I love the collaboration of it. And writing can be super lonely.
Mhm.
And as much as it's helpful to have editors look at your story from a mechanics point of view and a publication point of view, there's also something wonderful about just talking to someone else about this thing you see in your head. And I find that to be just the glory of writing right there.
Yeah. It's like, at least for this story, it was like, let's make the gross thing grosser. Let's make the weird thing weirder. It's like, everybody pushes a little bit on it. And sometimes it's that the solution is option C that you don't know about yet.
Mhm.
So like an editor might point to something that needs more information or whatever. So you have what you have what the editor suggests, and then maybe there's something else that you come up with that sort of is better than what you had, but also answers the question or the concern that the editor had. So editors are not the enemy. So if you are a writer out there, get comfortable working with editors because they are your best friends. They want your work to be the best it can be.
Absolutely. And I know some people will immediately go, well, I don't have money for an editor. And that's even more reason to make friends with other writers and look over each other's stuff and to have, I don't know, non-writers look at your stuff as well. My wife is not a writer in the slightest bit. She catches almost all of my typos. I learned very late she kept reading my books after they came out. And now they go through her first because she will catch something no matter how many times people have edited it. But she also asks questions that writers don't ask because we are so stuck in how we think already that like if I look at Rebecca's story or Don's story, there's going to be a large part of this is how James would do it. Like that's just what comes out.
Right.
And my wife doesn't have that. So it's just legitimately a reader saying, why didn't this happen? Or where is this? And that's just as valuable. So don't think it has to be a paid for editor. With that said, pay for editors because it's totally fucking worth it.
Heck yeah.
All right. If I may, I'm going to jump in on this right here. And I'm going to give another view of this. Don't be afraid of an editor telling you whatever you're doing is not working. That is not them saying you suck, your work sucks or anything, unless they explicitly say it sucks. That is not them saying anything about you as a writer. That is simply them trying to make the best writer in you come out. And I can say this having gone through a series of revisions and edits over the past few months with my advisor and other people who were looking at my work. It did nothing but make me better. My big fear was I'm going to bring this to my advisor, my mentor, and she's going to be like, this is the biggest pile of shit I've ever seen. Because that bias that you bring out, James, we then throw that on ourselves and say, this is not good enough. This is not good enough. I suck as a human being. I suck as a writer. I'm feeling shitty about all this stuff. And as a result, I'm not going to put out the best work for me. But when you get into somebody's hands, like James, you brought up Linda. I do the same thing with my wife. I sent the two of you a message in the chat, and I ran this story by her either last night or the night before. And it was one of those things like, oh, this is stupid. And she's like, no, that makes sense that it would work like this. And I immediately thought, like, well, that doesn't, or even, with the research that I was doing, it was that same thing, that other perspective of somebody else. That's the great thing about, the post-secondary education system is that you get feedback from different people, or you have the opportunity to. And for those of you who, again, you can't afford an editor or you're not thinking about it, there are people on college campuses, and I'm specifically saying on the college campuses because I know those resources available, that they'll help people from the public. It's not a thing of you have to be a student. If the
Right.
writing services are offered, especially at a public university, there are often times that those services are made available to the public in general. It's just that the students have first priority.
Yeah.
And take advantage of that. I mean, you have creative writing courses at community colleges that are free in a lot of cases, or workshops on weekends. And it's all things that if you really want to become a better writer, you got to do three things. Be okay with not hearing what you want to hear, but be okay with hearing what you need to hear.
Mhm.
2, write. And 3, read.
Yep.
Like, no, people miss that whole thing about reading, working with writing, because you see how other stuff gets communicated, and you can easily see how stuff gets miscommunicated through the way it's the tone of the way the writer was putting something. Sometimes the time period, the style, all these things. And anybody who says that there's only one good way to write, they're completely wrong. There is no one way to write. And if you happen to be one of those people who can write without any feedback or without anybody out there, great. I mean, ideally we could all do that, but in all honesty, we're much better writers, reviewers, revisers, editors, and audiences when we get exposed to more things, and more things that aren't necessarily in our wheelhouse.
But those people would too, if they would get over themselves, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like, you think you're great, maybe you're great. Like, you could be more great. And another resource I want people to know about, or not forget about, is your public library.
Yes, I'm sorry.
There are often writers groups that you can join for free, where y'all are helping each other out on your projects. And so you're getting a bunch of feedback and you're supporting people in return. So it's this nice little community that you can form with others. And if you don't have that locally, you can do that online.
Oh, and local bookshops too. I didn't think, because we have some in town where they have one, they have them based off of whoever their readership is. So all 3 bookstores are called Square Books. So there's Square Books, there's Off Square Books, and then there's Square Books Junior. They're all like within 50 feet or 50 or 100 feet of each other, just around the town square. And they do bookstores, independent bookstores, and commercial bookstores for that matter, which they're tending to go away. But the mom and pop, small independent booksellers, they love having community events, especially things that, one, are going to get people in the door, but also get people to be active readers and writers. So if you happen to have a local bookstore and they're not doing it, start it.
Yeah, like, you can, like, if you don't have this stuff, start it. You can be the answer for other people, and in so doing and being, solve your own issues.
One thing I want to add to what Don said, this goes back to one very specific little piece that he hit. You were talking about how we look at our stuff and we're like, oh, it's not perfect. And that's another reason that I like handing it to other people, because we all suffer from the problem of knowing how it looks in our heads, and we can never get there. And no one else that you give it to knows what you see. They don't know how good and how perfect it is in your brain and how you can't reach this utopia. They see what's actually there. And maybe it's not ready. Most things aren't. That's the point of first drafts and second drafts and sometimes 15th drafts. But other people aren't hampered by that vision. So they're able to help you get past it and know it's not going to reach what's in your head. I have never written anything that reached where I saw it in my head, but they will help you get it as good as it can fucking be.
I have a story that I started in 2007 and it was done in 2021.
There you go.
So
I feel like we kind of already hit a little of why you picked Bubba Ho-Tep. But I want to go deeper. Like, what made you love this movie before you started writing about assisted living facilities? Like, what was it? The humor? Like, what is it about this particular movie that you love?
So I think, on a serious note, this movie is it's really fun, but it's also a really serious look at ageism and how we throw people away.
Absolutely.
And I have an older dad. My dad was born in 1941. And so for reference, I believe Elvis was born in 1936. So my dad is just slightly younger than Elvis would be, I guess. And he was older when he had me. So I think that I was just like aware of older people before a lot of my peers were, because my dad is like a good 20 years older than like my best friend's parents. And so it's just something that I thought of. And I waitressed a lot in my young 20s, and I worked at diners, and there would be these old guys who would come in. Like, I would get there at 5:45 a.m. and by 6:02, they were there at their table, you know, drinking. Oh, I'm sorry. Elvis was born in 1935. These guys would be there at their table, drinking their coffee. And I know there are a lot of like pervy old guys who bothered me, you know, in my years of waitressing and bartending, but there were also a lot of just wonderful older guys that were just a bunch of sweet grandpas hanging around, you know, and they were fun to talk to, and they were fun to listen to, you know, they had good stories. And so I think I appreciate older people, and I don't like it when people just think they're irrelevant or disposable.
Beautiful.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that my parents had a business when I was a kid, and it was mainly focused on older people. So I spent my youth with people who were mostly at least 60. And a lot were way older than that. But that's like the cutoff point. Like, it was mainly retirees at these like festival kind of things that we went to, right? And I have always had a double fascination with it, because on the one hand, they were some of the greatest people I've ever met, because they did not fucking care what people thought of them. They made the best jokes. They and it wasn't like super racist or anything like that, Don, before you go there and try to call and joust me on this.
Wait, hold on a second. Before you get there, James. Here's the thing I want to establish for anybody who's listening. A good racial joke, I will laugh my ass off at. A racist joke, I will not laugh. That is your difference between, that tells you the difference between a racial joke and a racist joke. Am I going to laugh or am I not going to laugh?
But so the other fascination I had with it was I got to see them in pain, or I got to hear about their latest diagnoses, or a lot of them died and weren't at the next thing we went to at different points throughout my life. And it made me so acutely aware of death. It's part of why I'm a horror writer and why I'm obsessed with horror, but it's also, I feel it's made my life stronger, because I have been constantly convinced that I'm dying today, my entire life. And I try not to put shit off, and I try to remember to build memories, because if I do get to the point that these people were at, where they were 85 or whatever, I want to be able to, I don't want to be like, one time I was in my cubicle and I got this much work done, you know?
Right.
And so I find a fascination with both sides of the fear of growing old, of what I grew up with, but also the appreciation for what I'm living through.
Yeah.
And that was a very long way to ask if you have kind of the same thing, Rebecca.
Yes. And I feel I'm just going to get maudlin here, and I don't mean to get maudlin. I've also been very aware of like aging and what it means to age, and how lucky we are to age, because my mom died when I was a little kid. And I'm almost to the age now where she was when she died, which she was when she died. She died at, I believe, 43, and I am 41. And so I very much hope I live to be old. Like, what a gift to get those years with people. and to get those years to do things, because I'm not a parent. I know, you guys are, and that's like a whole richness that's in your life. I don't have kids. I've got great nieces and nephews, and I want to be there for them. And like, I got dogs to adopt, and I've got gross, perverted stories to write, and I hope that I get more time to do that, but I don't know that I will. So yeah, an appreciation for what it means to get older. But you're right, it is right. That sort of, it's tricky, because the other side of that is that, we live long enough to lose people, and we live long enough to see our bodies break down and to at least feel irrelevant, which is how, Jack and Elvis feel in this movie. So
Definitely.
it's tough.
Yeah, I've had a lot of friends pass away throughout my lifetime, like starting at like 16. I went through a 6-year period where at least one friend died every single year. And
That's horrible. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, it's totally fucked with me. And but you were talking about almost reaching the same age, and I just passed part of the depression I was talking about earlier in December was passing the exact number of days of being alive that my father had a 6 bypass.
Yeah.
And I don't smoke 3 or 4 packs a day, but I like triple cheeseburgers, so I'm not doing much better in some regards.
Yeah.
And it really, really fucked with me paying attention to that date, which I didn't need to do. I never needed to look that up and know the exact number of days, and then he died when he was 54, and I'm currently 46. And when I hit 44, I was like, well, fuck, I got 10 years to get shit done.
Yeah.
And that makes no sense, because that's not a real thing.
But it feels that way when you
absolutely
lose a
does.
parent young.
Yeah.
My sister is a couple years older than I am, and I did not know that she was also counting to the day. So she let me know the day that she lived as long as our mother did.
Yep.
So it messes with you, and you think a lot about time and age, and what it means to be able to get old.
I already told my wife I'm taking a trip when I hit 54 and the number of days. And I was like, wouldn't it be ironic as fuck if my plane crashes? Like, that would suck.
Okay, Alanis.
But like, it's funny, but it's also, I don't know, it's morbid, but like, that's how I deal with shit, like, it's just that weird little kick. Anyway, so let's fully jump into this instead.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry,
James. Can I say something?
No,
please.
Usually you ask
God.
questions and don't give us answers. So I just figured you don't like telling people about your personal life.
Well, no, because now I'm like, well, shit. This kind of feels like a humble brag, and I'm not planning to do it. I have I guess I have a perspective about it a little bit different, because everybody in my family made it past 80. I'm sorry, my grandparents on both sides made it past 80. My grandfather, I think I take that back, I think to 75, because my grandmother died a lot younger than he did. But yeah, he made it to 96. My grandfather on my mother's side, I think when he passed, he was 81. Wow. My grandmother was the same age. Like, she just passed fall of 2022. And for me, it was the issue of seeing people, and I don't ever want to say somebody's deteriorating, but I mean, as far as like their health, their joints, things like that, and it just gets referred to as, there is a deterioration in their health, in their physical activity. Because I remembered both sets of grandparents being active inside the house and outside the house. So my grandmother, both, they were always cooking something, and you better not cook something in their kitchen. If you want something, you ask them, they'll go get it. Like, both my father's mother more so than my mom's mom, because as we got older, she's like, get in the damn kitchen, get the shit yourself. And I was just like, yes, grandma. But I mean, that was her way of saying, sweetie, honey, what? Because it was one of those things that if she was watching Young and the Restless or General Hospital, you go get whatever you want. Don't bother her.
Yeah.
But I got to see how they changed over this time. And I had to admit to my mom, I partially don't want to go to Virginia because I haven't been to Virginia in years. I don't want to see I want to remember my grandmother as she was. I don't want to see her as the sick little woman who is skin and bone. Like she was a plus size woman. And by the time she had passed, she was less than 100 pounds. So she was about like 5'2", always, a steady weight, steady size to her. Because everybody noticed, like, your grandmother does not look like the same person. And my mom, knowing this, I said, I don't want to see her this way. I'll talk to her on the phone. We'll talk over the phone. I said, but please don't put her on video. Because one, it hurt me to see somebody in that state. And my mom slipped one time because we were talking on video, and she said, "Oh, say hello to your grandmother." My grandmother was barely conscious, but everybody was, in the house around her and things like that. And me seeing it, like, it made me physically ill, not because of the state that she was in. It was just that sense of sorrow and like, oh my, I'm already mourning her. Is basically what was taking place. So for me, both sets of grandparents stayed in the house or stayed with family members, way past retirement. So they were never like put in a retirement community or assisted living, anything like that. And because of that, I've just had an aversion to assisted living, at least for me going to one. But I've had an aversion to it because I see those places, now not all, but as far as like my sentiment, my feeling towards it, my personal perspective is that's it. There's nothing left. Like, this is basically, you're waiting to die. So for me, it was always scary thinking about that. Not saying that was what was taking place or that's what other people were thinking about themselves. But for me, I was kind of like, that is a scary place to me. I don't like hospitals for the most part. I have set foot in maybe one retirement home, one retirement community, which the retirement communities, retirement homes, completely different. And then at least one hospice. I've never felt as uneasy in a place as I felt in a retirement home, assisted living home, or in a hospice. And what I saw, because my dad was volunteering at these hospices, and this is also one of those things that grounds my fear behind it, was he said that he volunteered to do the hospice work, which he basically would just check in on patients and talk to them and talk to the families and things like that. And I was just wondering, I'm like, oh my, and I told him this, so this is not one of these things where I say it on the show and then I got to worry about, later. I told him before, I'm like, what happened to the asshole who raised me? And he's, we kind of chuckled because we were both grown at this point. And we just laughed about it. I'm like, Dad, you don't, this is weird for me to see you caring about people. And he was like, no, I always cared for people. I always cared about people. But the thing is, it was an issue for me of taking care of people when I worked at the VA to make sure they got their benefits and widows got their benefits and things like that, because people are not helping them. And he had the same perspective with the hospice, which was, I'm here because from people I know who had worked here or interacted with through the VA who had sent people here, they're like, oh, so many of these people die in hospice with nobody there. So for him, it was, well, I'm retired. I'll go and sit with these people. I'll volunteer. I'll stay, talk to them. I'll pray with them. I'll, comfort the families, all this. So he did that for a while until it became too much for him. But the thing for him was he felt horrible that there were so many people here. And he said the vast majority were men. There are so many people here who did not have somebody with them. And when he told that to me, that immediately made me fearful of God, I don't want to be that person who dies in a hospice by himself. I don't want to be that guy who dies, in a hospital and no family comes to visit you. So my fear with an assisted living place was, holy shit, your family doesn't care about you. That was what was going on in my head, was why would your family put you there unless there was a medical need? Because whenever I saw, and I hate to use this term, people who would be deemed able-bodied. There are no health afflictions, no disabilities, anything like that other than age. I would see, those instances, and when those individuals were left there by themselves, I just thought to myself, God, like, why would somebody do that to you? Why would somebody pass you off? And or worst case scenario, like, hey, we're going to pick you up on Saturday, Pop. We're going to go on a road trip. And then you've got these people that are waiting for their sons or their grandkids to show up, and there's nobody there. Like that destroys me, thinking about how one, not wanting that to happen to me, but two, that it happens to so many people.
Yeah.
But I don't have the capacity to do it and volunteer, because I would probably hunt down their families. Yeah. And then drag them back and saying, like, you put your pop in here and he did this. He was a Nazi. Oh, fuck, never mind. Never mind. I understand why he's here.
Well, I mean, Elvis wanted to stock down his roommate's family, or at least one member.
Oh yeah. But
maybe that was different. Sorry.
But then again, she was probably too old for Elvis. Never mind. I'm sorry. That was a dig at Elvis. Man. That was a dig at Elvis.
So, Rebecca, I know you have 20 pages of notes. So, where would you like to lead this? And we'll be good over here instead.
Well,
wait, Rebecca. Before you go, I want to give this warning. I apologize to any Elvis fans who are listening. I'm not an Elvis fan. I'm a Johnny Cash fan. With that being said,
Johnny Cash is actually 2 rooms down from Elvis, as Rebecca already knows.
Oh, he beat me to it. Anyway, I'm sorry, Rebecca.
That's all right. I have all sorts of stuff, but I'm gonna just start with some facts for people who maybe haven't seen it, so that we can get them to watch it and help them find it. Bubba Ho-TEP was made in 2002. It is based on a story by Joe Lansdale, directed by Don Coscarelli, who also did Phantasm, and so people probably know him better from Phantasm. The screenplay was by Joe Lansdale and Don Coscarelli, so that's probably why it was so good, because Joe Lansdale got to contribute. Stars Bruce Campbell as Elvis, Ossie Davis as Jack, and Bob Ivy is Bubba Ho-TEP. And it won a ton of awards. So a lot of the places that I looked online, there were people hated this movie, like critics were so mad about it. But it won a lot of awards. It won a Stoker Award for Best Screenplay, an International Horror Guild Award for Best Movie, 3 International Fantasy Film Awards, a Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Award for Best Genre Film, and just a ton more of awards and nominations. So it is comedy horror, but it was also a serious contender as far as its merits. So good stuff all around on this movie. And I got to go off in tons of different directions with research, which was really fun. So I got to research Elvis and all of the conspiracies surrounding his death and possible not being dead. I got to go back and research JFK stuff and those conspiracy theories. And I also researched elder abuse. Less fun because those are pretty sad facts. I researched iron lungs. And I had this panicked moment shortly before we were recording because I really wanted to know what year the hearse was, like the year of that model of hearse used in the movie. And I couldn't find it anywhere. And so I knew that my friend Moner Lawrence would know if anyone were to just know that. So I panic messaged Moner, and he got back to me in moments with the exact make and model. So
oh my god, what was it?
I was not wrong about that. Okay, well now you're asking me to find it in my notes.
Well, while she
All
looks,
right.
I got to tell Dawn this. So she wrote me and said that she couldn't find it. So I wrote her back and I said that I asked Johnny Cash, who lives 2 doors down from Elvis, and he told me it was a 60, 61, 62, 63, 64. Anyway, hilarious joke if you're a Johnny
Really?
Cash fan. Yeah.
Really, James?
Yes, really.
So funny.
That was good though. I mean, you incorporated. I've been everywhere.
All right. I still have to find where the problem is too many notes. Now I don't know where I wrote it, but I will find it.
Well, I could ask James this. I actually can ask both of you this. But starting off, since you said you looked up some of these conspiracies, like what was your favorite one that you found? And then James, what is one of the favorite conspiracies or myths around either one of these characters being JFK or Elvis that just stood out to you or just really loved or
Well, I really like that they used the historically accurate version of what happened to each in this movie. I think that that's important. We all know JFK was dyed black and hidden, and that that Elvis switched himself out with an impersonator. I mean, everybody knows these things, and I appreciate that we put conspiracy theories aside for a second and went historically accurate. My real answer to you is there was a big thing when Tupac died that he was living on an island with Elvis, and that's always just been like the funniest shit to me. Like just picturing the two of them like on like little lawn chairs or blankets with like margaritas in their hand, just looking out at the ocean. I don't know. Like I would love that as like a print to hang on my wall. It's that funny.
Oh my God. Somebody make it. That's my turn to say it. Somebody make it. Elvis, Tupac, and we got to find somebody
like
else.
Bigfoot, but put him blurry in the background. And because Bigfoot's actually blurry, if you don't know, that's why he doesn't show up in pictures. And going to JFK, I mean, I don't know. JFK is one of those things that was always so straightforward to me that I never got into the conspiracy theories. So I don't really have any on that. I do like the Quantum Leap episode though, where Sam tries to save JFK, and then when he jumps forward, Al's like, "Your Swiss cheese mind doesn't remember, but the first time Jackie died too." And I always just thought that was fucking hilarious. So
it was
I'm gonna
great.
throw that in.
See, and you know how much I love Quantum Leap. Thank you, James.
I felt kind of bad.
So happy.
I felt kind of bad. You made me might bring it up.
No, I actually wasn't going to bring it up. I completely forgot about that episode because that's not one of my favorite series. I guess it was like 2 or 3 episodes. But anyway. All right, Rebecca, what was one of your favorite conspiracy theories around Elvis?
I would tell us about the Hearst first. Yeah.
I found the Hearst answer from Moner. So it is a 1970 Cadillac Fleetwood Landau Hearst by Hess and Eisenhart.
Wow.
So, and I feel kind of good because I'm not a car person, but I was like, oh, like that looks, like a 1970s-ish car. And I was kind of right. So my favorite conspiracy theory, I actually think the conspiracies surrounding JFK are less interesting than the conspiracies surrounding Elvis. And I found myself getting weirdly drawn into them and being like, maybe he's not dead. So I thought the most ridiculous JFK conspiracy was that the driver of the car shot him.
Yeah.
Maybe on purpose because he was like working for Johnson, like one of the big conspiracies, which is touched on in Bubba Ho-Tep, right? Is that Lyndon Johnson is coming back to finish off the job.
Right.
But I found this fascinating article about the Elvis isn't dead conspiracy in the Roanoke Times from 1994. That's a Virginia newspaper. There's like a whole society or club of folks called the Presley Commission, an independent group of self-described armchair detectives formed in 1992 that has been investigating Elvis Presley's death. And like, I know that I'm going to sound like a nut, but I'm like, okay, that's intriguing. Like, there are a lot of facts here. And I put finger quotes around facts. Nobody can see that right now. But I am. Are you ready for them?
Yes.
Oh, I'm ready.
You ready for the things
I'm
that
just
I'm
trying
like,
to not make a joke about the Roanoke paper disappearing. So continue.
all right. So the guy they interviewed is Phil Aitchison, who's
Oh yes, the wax figure story.
There is a wax figure story in this.
Okay.
What is happening?
All right. Okay. So Elvis was appointed an honorary sheriff's deputy in Shelby County, Tennessee in 1968. Okay. So Aitchison, all of this is according to Aitchison, it was more than an honorary position. Aitchison says, how else do you explain why he took a firearms test and filled out a job application as part of the process? There is evidence that he participated in drug stakeouts as a deputy. In 1970, he contacted President Nixon. Again, all of this is allegedly, who named him a special agent at large for the government agency that would become the DEA. Aitchison says, this, again, was not an honorary title. Quote from Aitchison, DEA doesn't hand out honorary badges, period. It just doesn't happen. Says that as this agent, this precursor to the DEA, Elvis became a government informant telling on drug traffickers in the music and entertainment industry. Dubbed Operation Fountain Pen by the FBI, Elvis's testimony led to a series of indictments issued coincidentally the day before he died. Aitchison says, I rest my case. This guy was a cop through and through. Mob threats then inspired Elvis to fake his own death to protect himself and his family. The government cooperated in the cover-up. Aitchison points to Elvis's military stint when the army stationed him at a base in New Jersey, but told everybody he was in Texas to keep him away from the media. And Aitchison said if the government was willing to protect him in the army, then they would certainly be willing to protect Agent Presley later. There is more. The coroner, couldn't say that word, apologies. Edit that out, coroner, who performed the autopsy. You don't have to edit it out. And I know you won't, even if I ask you to.
I knew this was going to come up. Oh, yes. Man. Continue.
You shall not live it down that you told me you will not edit anything. The coroner who performed the autopsy on Elvis also wrote medical journals for the Department of Justice, linking him to the agency overseeing the conspiracy. Aitchison said, it puts him right smack up to his eyeballs in it. I love that Aitchison's quotes make he sounds like a detective in a noir comic strip. And there's a bunch more. And then, Don, do you want to talk about the wax figure thing? Because this is so good.
Okay. I just know like the basics of it. The idea that the government created a wax figure that looked like Elvis to put on display as his body. And it was something about the interaction, or I might just be mixing up a bunch of different theories, but it was something supposed to be about an interaction between Priscilla and Priscilla's face at one time her picture is taken at the funeral. It's supposed to indicate that she might have been a government agent as part of this. I mean, here's my favorite theory out of all the theories is that he's alive and he ended up working with Christopher Columbus on several movies to ensure that he still was getting money. But he wanted to have a life of solitude, but a life away from all the glitz and glamour. So he's apparently in like 3 or 4 different. I'm sorry. there is an Elvis-like figure in several Chris Columbus movies, either in the background or somewhere in the film that you can see him. One of the more famous examples is that of Home Alone. I think it's like one of the airport scenes where there's somebody in the background, either in Chicago or France. I can't remember which one, or possibly one of those stops when Catherine O'Hara's character comes back. But there's this one figure that looks a lot like Elvis in the background. So there are conspiracy theorists who are alleging that Elvis faked his death to have a private life, but in order to have some money and support himself, he started became a background. I'm sorry, an extra.
He's a movie extra. He's making $10 a day.
Yeah,
on movie
Good
sets.
for him.
Wow.
That's more than I'm making.
Yeah.
That's enough to afford some bananas, some bread. Never mind.
And peanut butter?
Yes.
Yeah. Gotta love those fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches.
Allegedly, there are photos of Elvis dead in the casket, dead finger quotes.
Right.
But he's sweating. And
I forgot about that one.
Yeah. So Aitchison said corpses don't sweat, but wax will. And this is my favorite part. This is how Aitchison proved that this was all true to the Roanoke Reporter. He performed his own experiment by cooling a wax candle in the freezer and then taking it out into room temperature. Condensation formed on the candle's surface. So, based on just that hard evidence, Elvis is alive.
Case closed.
So,
the other one,
a lot of that stuff is just wild, but so interesting.
The JFK one that I always like, which, I would be on the verge of Alex Jones with a couple of these conspiracy theories because I'm like, they're so fucking wild. Like, they have to be true.
Yeah.
Like the whole disposal of Kennedy's brain. Like, I saw it in documentaries. I saw it in these stories about, or the fact that it's, I guess, Jackie O's dress is going to be held in the archives for another 75 years or something. So it's one of those things where people are like, why are you I can see why people would have these questions of what is the government trying to hide? What is going on? Was Kennedy, in fact, who killed him? Because it couldn't have just been one person. It had to have been the driver turning around and shooting him in the face. Then there's a story that Jackie killed him because she was she was a CIA asset that was to keep him in check. And the one video I love that could be used for this, I don't know if the conspiracy theorists have used this. I remember, because I've always loved history. And one of my favorite presidents up through like high school was Kennedy. And it was an interview with Jackie Kennedy, then Jackie Kennedy, because they were still married. He was still alive. And the interviewer asked her, "Oh, do you love your husband?" And she says, "No." And then she stops and thinks and says, "Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I love my husband." And I remember as a kid, I'm like, whoa, like that was weird that they would have, presented it. The documentary would have caught that and presented, because this was the 80s. We weren't at that point where you had everybody on the internet who had a different conspiracy and had the ability to easily and cheaply edit video. But no, these were actually, that was the raw cut from one of the interviews I think she had with NBC or the Associated Press. And it was just funny to see how the light clicked. She's like, "Oh my God." And it could have been, she was tired. It could have been, she's not, she doesn't like all the cameras and all this attention. Because even after he died, like, Jackie married another man, but she wasn't that much in the public. So we could, you could make the argument of like, she wasn't somebody who wanted to be in front of cameras or in front of the press. Yeah. But I love how some of the theories use actual historical evidence out of context, which a lot of conspiracy theories do. But to take something like, oh, look at the way that Jackie is turning around and getting on top of the convertible. And I'm like, her husband just got shot. She's trying to get away from the danger. Like, and actually,
one of the crazy things said about her is, did you hear the one where it's like, well, why did she wear light pink that day?
Oh my
Did you
God.
hear that one? So folks said that she wore pale pink on purpose because she knew he was going to get shot, and she wanted the blood on her dress to show up in black and white photographs, which is just a wild, like, it was the spring and it was the 60s, and she wore pale pink because she wore pale pink,
I feel like if I knew that he was going to get shot that day, maybe my stomach hurts and I'm not getting in the car.
Yeah, because somebody can miss.
Yep. As he did, because he shot the governor as well in the back, though he survived.
Yeah, but nobody brings up that part. It's always Lee Harvey Oswald did. Well, that's the other cool thing, right? Well, I shouldn't say cool thing. That's the other interesting thing about this. The fact that Jack Ruby kills him after he's arrested just helps so many conspiracy theories, because Jack Ruby was a nightclub owner and he was linked to the mob. So there was a mob hit, and Jack Ruby was the guy who's, covering up the hit by killing Oswald before he can tell anybody.
Or maybe he was a good guy with a gun. I've heard about those.
Well, yeah. So I looked into that too, and there is this interesting connection, and it's not. It's only geography, but
right.
So JFK was, of course, like immediately dead, but he was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital, Parkland Hospital in Dallas. So when Jack Ruby then 2 days later shot Lee Harvey Oswald, he lived for a couple of hours, but he was taken to that same hospital and died in that hospital. And then years later, Jack Ruby died in the same hospital of complications with like cancer and all sorts of ailments. Ruby was convicted of murder, but then apparently his confession was inadmissible. So that ruling was overturned and he was supposed to do another trial. But in the meantime, he got pneumonia. When he went into the hospital, they found cancer and he died a short time later. But all three men died in the same hospital.
And you know what I say to anybody who's wondering about, why was there only one hospital? There weren't as many hospitals in that area.
Yeah. And it's like, it's all the same area, right? Like they were right there. So, but I still think kind of interesting that they all, dude dies, then his murderer dies, and then that guy's murderer dies. All in the same hospital. One of the things that's fueling all of these and has fueled the conspiracy theories is that, and probably because, right, he was shot 2 days later, but nobody knows exactly why Oswald killed JFK. Like, there's no direct link. He didn't rant and rave. He didn't have like one of those serial killer rooms at home, where he just had all these candid photos of JFK up all over the place with like X's drawn over his eyes. So people are like, well, why did he do it? And, and then of course it's because he was put up to it by others.
We've been talking for an hour and we haven't even touched on the movie. This is awesome. These are these conversations.
This is what I do. I kill the fun with
what are you talking about? This is fun.
What are you talking about? I've been muted playing Nintendo Switch over here. No, I'm just kidding.
I just love the whole way, because if you look at this as, it's an action horror, it could be hit or miss. But if you look at this as, all right, here is the mixture of at least 2, possibly 3 conspiracy theories. What would happen? Because we always put these conspiracy theories in a world of their own, right? Bigfoot doesn't. I take that back. I was going to say Bigfoot does exist in the same world as Elvis, but Bat Boy, which was on all those Inquirer, Examiner, whatever they were. Bat Boy would fit in this world. Like he could be the one who came to rescue them at the end. You could have done so many things because we don't have these moments, or at least I haven't seen them. So I don't want to say they don't exist, but I haven't seen a really fun way to interpret and reinterpret these different conspiracy theories and different levels to conspiracy theories like this. You've got the Mel Gibson movie, but it's more an issue of like he has this one idea that actually is true and the government comes after him.
Yeah.
But there's not where the conspiracy theories themselves intersect. And I really like this. And I like the way that they even kind of, whether they are or they aren't the people, I love the way that they interact with each other and respect each other's identity, even if they don't believe the other person is, Kennedy or this guy happens to be Elvis.
Yeah.
Because even the nurse at one point, she's like, Mr. Presley, she finally calls him that because it's like, what is it going to hurt me to call you this if you think you are?
Yeah.
It seems like relative social commentary of some sort. People wanting to identify a certain, and then some people respecting it, whether they agree with it or not, and other people insisting on using other names for people. Fascinating.
I set it up, and you
part of
spiked
the
it.
sweetness of the movie, because I think there is a lot of sweetness in this movie, and like in this environment, these two guys are the only ones who respected each other.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
I literally wrote in my notes and said, "This is what it's going to be like for James and Don in about 40 years."
It's cute that you think I'll still be here.
Oh, you'll be here. I'll make sure you're here.
I'll haunt you, so I mean, we'll still talk.
You guys
I'll
can
leave.
fight a monster together.
I'm gonna leave him
I'm
my
down.
ventures.
God damn you. All right. I honestly did not take many notes on this because I was laughing at some things that were taking place.
Lucky for you, Rebecca has 6 pages over here.
Oh no, and I'm saying
I'm gonna change the number every time I say it.
Yeah.
Well,
For everyone listening, so I said I didn't have a lot of notes, but then I looked and I was like, oh, I have 11 typed pages and 3 handwritten pages. But I still think it's not as much as I had listed. Because I have a ton more stuff on like conspiracies, and we don't need to talk about all of it. But can we talk about the anachronism of the movie? Because that is something that stands out to me every time I watch it.
Sure, go for it. You're in charge
So-
here. We're just coming along for the ride.
All right. So the movie was made in 2002. And when it opens up, it says that it's the current day. So it does not give us a year, which is really interesting because the current day can just mean anything, pretty much.
Mhm.
We are told in the movie by, I can't remember if it's Elvis or if it is the nurse who says that he's been there 20 years. So,
oh, you know what? I can't remember either because
one of them says it was 20 years, and I'm
right.
losing that. So it's 20 years after Elvis dies. So in real life, that was late 70s. August 16th, 1977 was when he died. According to the movie, that's when his stand-in, Sebastian Haff, actually died, because Sebastian Haff liked drugs even more than he did, he says. So then that would put us at like 1997. So it's in about the same era. And so Elvis would be about 62, so in his 60s. That fits all of that. But there's nothing 1990s or 2000s about any of the movie except for his roommate's daughter, who looks very, very 1990s. And I don't know why they took so much care in removing time from the rest of the movie Like all of the furniture and the decor, like the interior of the rest home, Shady Rest Convalescent Home, is very 1960s. The way the hearse drivers dress, the way the nurses dress, the technology in the place, everything feels very 1960s. But then in walks this very 1990s looking young woman, hair, outfit, all of that. But
I have a
otherwise,
theory on that.
okay, go ahead.
So I dated a CNA who worked at a nursing home when I was in college. And she told me that they were very strategic with how they decorate because with dementia, Alzheimer's, and just being older in general, that if you had everything too up to date, it like raised agitation and anxiety because it was stuff they weren't used to. And I have no idea if that actually plays into why it's decorated the way it is, but I think it's a fascinating concept that you would try to keep things in a time that people feel comfortable with. I'm not saying that you'd all be walking around in 1960s clothing or whatever, but I don't know if that plays into it or not. But as you brought that up, that's what I thought about. I thought about her saying that as they changed decor to be basically like 20 years behind, and I'm talking about like stuff hanging on the wall or different things like that, not super overdoing it. And I don't know. I didn't know if that might play into why it is the way it is. And the only thing that you brought up that violates that is the two people with the hearse, because there'd be no reason for them to be dressed that way. But it would explain the 90s girl because she's on the outside and not a part of that. All right, there you go.
Okay, so that's a fair point, but you bring up the morgue attendants or the funeral home attendants, the two idiots who come in and drop bodies and stuff, very bumbling. So like they dress very 1960s-ish, and then we have that 1970 hearse. And also we have the iron lung.
Oh yeah.
One of the most interesting insertions of like old timiness in the movie.
That doesn't need to be there.
It doesn't really need to be there, but so it's there, and it's there on purpose.
Yeah.
So iron lungs were another name, their more official name, Emerson respirators, and they ceased manufacturing in 1970. So none were made after 1970. They were a treatment for polio because polio affects breathing as well as the muscles. And in 1952. They developed a vaccine for polio. So that meant that pretty quickly iron lungs became largely obsolete. This is according to the Ohio State University. In 1959, 1,200 people in the US, which is not a lot, were in iron lungs regularly. But because of the vaccines, by the 2000s, there were like 12. So very, very low numbers of people would be still using those. And then this is just an interesting fact that has nothing to do with the movie. During the worst of COVID-19, they sort of updated the iron lung to help people who were having trouble breathing because of COVID-19.
I was going to say, there was something, I either saw it through social media or on the news. There are some retirement communities, and I'm sorry, not even retirement communities, assisted living facilities that have been renovating and changing the way in which they operate to give each individual their own space, like a little, what are those? A tiny home on the grounds. But then they have everything decorated for them in certain areas based off the time period of that their family had set up for them or they had requested, so that they have somebody, they can still have this mental stimulation. They can still feel comfortable, still feel as though they're living independently. And then all the help staff, as far as the medical professionals, whether it's the psychiatrists, the nurses, the CNAs, anybody like that, they're just in regular clothing. They're not wearing a uniform. They're not wearing a name tag. so they don't give them the feeling that they're in a place that gets associated with death. They're in a place that's get associated with, I've been left behind. It's creating another community. And I think there are even some countries and some communities in the United States where they have partnerships between retirement communities and sometimes assisted living facilities and with elementary schools. And they'll have like adopt a grandma, adopt a grandpa, that type of situation that's set up. And these individuals get to tell their stories to these kids, and these kids get to learn things about the past. They get to learn about these people's lives, but also these individuals get that physical and mental stimulation by interacting with children. And these are the things that I wish we had more of and more access to for people who need it. Because that's again, you got the health issues, but you also have the community needs that would be taken care of.
Yeah, and the depression, that so many folks feel in these places. And also I think in this movie, the sort of lack of time, because it wasn't like they went out of their way to say it was the 1960s. They said it was 20 years later, so it's more like a mismatch of time than setting it in the 60s,
Right.
And I think and an article in the last drive-in supports my theory, but it's like these people were just left behind by not only the world but time itself. Like they're sort of out of time, they're completely forgotten. And I think that fits with the other themes in the movie. Also, very interestingly, parts of the movie were filmed in an abandoned VA hospital.
Well, I'm going to keep my comment to myself.
No, don't.
Well, when we talk about people being forgotten, I've seen a good number of movies that are able to capture. Now, this isn't the way it necessarily is now, but how things had been with the VA, like through the Vietnam War up through the first Gulf War, right? But yeah, I mean, even using it, you've got that inclusion of forgotten individuals, because there are a lot of folks that I see, like the alerts that come through my social media every now and then, where it's all hands on deck. Anybody who's possible, go to this funeral of this vet who died at the state vet home or here or whatever, so that there's somebody there to say goodbye to them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've seen way too many of those. I mean, one is too many, but I've seen too many that have come through like that. And it's, hey, we're just trying to help, no cost, but your time. If you're in, I think the last one was like Virginia. So if you're in the Jetersville area or Farmville area, come here to this funeral home and, send this guy home.
Yeah. And it's such a part of the movie, with the roommate and his daughter throwing his Purple Heart away. Like she packs a bag of her father's old clothes for whatever reason, like a duffel bag of old clothes, and then throws out all of the pictures of him. And a lot of those pictures were of him in uniform, and throws out his Purple Heart. And Elvis makes a point of saying, "Can I have that? That was really important to your dad." And she just doesn't care.
All right. Here's what I got for you on this. Intentional or not, this is canon for me.
Okay.
This movie exists in the same universe as Saving Private Ryan, because the roommate was the actor who played the adult Private Ryan. So when Matt Damon's face transitions into the old man at the end of the movie, that's the same guy. So for me, it's kind of like, maybe this is the writer team producer that are in here trying to say, I'm sorry, director, not producer, that are trying to kind of push it home a little bit more, because around this same time period, I remember, oh gosh, Tom Hanks, when he was shooting Castaway, he went to DC, and people were kind of shocked because of his appearance. They're like, "Why do you have so much hair? Why is your beard so long?" He was growing it out for that part of the movie, and he came to DC and did a few press. Oh my gosh, I forgot the term. Not press conferences, but he went to go to different stations and networks to talk about the fact that there is no World War II memorial, and that something needs to be done. And what he was pointing out was these people, these veterans, these heroes are all dying, and we need to do something to recognize them before they're all gone. And when this movie was made in 2002, that's right around the same time that year or two after, Tom Hanks doing that. So I could easily see this actor being put in this role as a nice little Easter egg and a nice little nod to, all these people who are being forgotten and left behind, or just rendered invisible.
Mm-hmm. I think
So
he played a
it's canon
veteran
for me.
in another movie too, but I don't remember what it was. Like that same actor.
Mhm.
And of course,
It just,
everybody in the movie, right? Like Elvis was a veteran and JFK was a veteran. So I think that's not hidden. That's not subtext in the movie. That's really very much on the surface.
Okay, James, you're not going to ask the question. I'm sorry, you're not going to bring this up, so I'm going to bring it up. Again, I love that they respect each other's identities, who they are, whether this is true or not, right? Because I'm sure there's a nice little Reddit board with conspiracy theories about this movie, because I had a lot of friends who watched this movie and started talking about stuff that was going on. But I love how he kind of, they're about to face Bubba Ho-Tep, and he, just because he knows either one of them might not make it back, he's like, I gotta know, Marilyn. And Jack, without missing a beat, he's like, hey man, that's classified, or that's confidential or something. And he's like, but between you and me, wow. And it was one of those funny things that I don't remember it being addressed, talked about, or whatever, but you always have Kennedy's name synonymous. I'm sorry, you have it intertwined with Monroe or just Maryland. You have it intertwined because if you're talking about history, you're talking about his presidency, you're talking about any types of conspiracies. There's a conspiracy that the Kennedys killed her to stop her from talking about, what had been going on as far as like making it public that they had been sleeping together. So I mean, there's so many layers to this, where it could have honestly been a played off, oh, here's this crazy old man who thinks he's JFK, and there's crazy old man who thinks he's, Elvis, and they're going to fight a mummy demon. Could have easily played it off like that. But I mean, there was a lot of time invested in the backstory, a lot of time invested in, I would say, in the historical truths, but then the conspiratorial truths as well, with quotation marks.
I like that we don't get answers.
I really like this. Exactly.
I love that both go to their grave without answering it. And I think that no matter the answer, it would bring this movie down. I think leaving it open-ended works the absolute best. And it doesn't matter if he's really Elvis. He believes it enough, or he identifies with him enough that even his final words, the thank you very much, it's that ingrained that it doesn't matter, because if he's not Elvis, he's more Elvis than the dead guy is.
Yeah.
And Jack Kennedy, same thing. I love that there's no answers.
And with the Jack Kennedy thing, I think that we get enough information about both of them for. So obviously the Elvis character is Bruce Campbell's character is sort of the literal narrator,
Mhm.
and so we get enough information for us to consider him to be an unreliable narrator, because he freely admits to us all of his years of drug use, and we know that he was in a coma, so there could be brain injuries happening. So we already know that he may or may not be telling the truth, or more like remembering the truth. But even with the JFK character, with Jack Ossie Davis,
Mhm.
like when you see his room, you're like, is he JFK? He has the swankiest room in that place. Everybody else has like these bare floors that are definitely asbestos tile.
Right.
He's got carpeting and, this beautiful carved wooden sleigh style bed. He's got all of these snacks, and all over the walls are framed pictures of JFK, and also the people who killed him, and the people who may have killed him, and
Right.
but he's got these silk pajamas, and so it's sort of like you kind of do have to stop for a second and say, like, all right, maybe I don't believe he's JFK, but like he's got money.
Yep.
Where all this money come from? He wears a suit. He kind of seems like he had an important life. Every time, have you, and you probably did. I don't know why I said, did you notice? Like you didn't, you did. When anyone else is in trouble in the middle of the night, there is no security in that place. There
Mhm.
aren't any night nurses. There's nobody at the front desk. There are no alarm bells ringing. The kleptomaniac lady is just murdered by Bubba Hotep without anyone even like getting out of bed to look. But when something happens to Jack, he's got doctors, plural, in his room. He's got like a whole team of nurses in there. So I'm not saying he's Jack Kennedy, but like he's somebody who is important enough to come call everyone, to come in and
Right.
help. And he's got money and he's got connections. So I think the movie does a really great job of at least leaving the door open to maybe,
Mhm.
even in its ridiculousness.
The piece that I admire the most in the writing of this is that he insists on going by Jack.
Right.
Like there's just something that immediately makes that more believable, that he would want to be Jack. You know what I mean? And then I have this problem where I don't know how much of what they see is real. Like, because we have an unreliable narrator, and because these two could be totally bonkers, right? Like,
Yeah.
So maybe what we're seeing on the screen is what they're seeing and not what's even really there. And that becomes a whole different conversation that we don't need to jump into overly. But it made me wonder, like, are these doctors legit? Is this legit? Like, I don't know. It was it added another layer of fun to me, but the Jack thing is interesting to me. Just the way he carries himself. Like, even if he's not Jack Kennedy, like this confidence he exudes and this like regal kind of demeanor, even when he's just standing watching other people, it's very different than everyone else in the movie.
Yeah.
And I think the writing in this is so incredibly solid all around. And I'll shut up now, and you guys can do
it's a really smart movie. I get mad when I see people being like, that's dumb, I hated that movie, and I'm like, watch it again because you missed something.
I mean, that's my whole thing. Anything that's deep in a utterly ridiculous concept, that's my happy place. So this was utterly fantastic to me in that regard.
I was going to say with Ossie Davis, anything you watch him in, he plays that role. And I don't mean that in a way of like, of course he plays. What I mean is you believe he is that person. And in casting, they picked the right person for this.
Yeah.
Because everything he's in, whether it's when he was in Do the Right Thing. Oh my gosh, wait, am I doing that wrong? Yes, Do the Right Thing. Where You are convinced this man is an alcoholic, troubled, got all these. When he's in, get on the bus, it's that same type of presence where it's like, I'm going to be the interlocutor. I'm going to be the one who's going to carry it. You're not going to be able to take your eyes or ears off of me. And you're going to miss me when I'm gone. Spoiler alert. So.
I have got just some fun stuff. The book that Jack had, The Everyday Man or Woman's Book of the Soul. It is shown a few times, like the text is shown in the movie. And the text is from the beginning of H.P. Lovecraft's 1927 work, Supernatural Horror in Literature. But that was fun. Other good stuff from IMDb. Before Bruce Campbell accepted the role of Elvis, he wanted to check one thing, and so he asked the director, "Are you going to show the penis?" I don't know if that meant he wanted to or didn't want to, but he checked about it. Bruce Campbell helped promote the movie by bringing it along with him on his book tour for his autobiography, If Chins Could Kill, Confessions of a B-Movie Actor, which I want to read. I mentioned that a lot of the movie was shot at an abandoned veterans hospital outside Los Angeles, and even the trailer park explosion was done there. And they did that trailer park explosion in one take. The entire movie, that was a great scene. The entire movie had a budget of like $500,000, which is roughly 1% of big box film budgets. So it was a very small amount of money. And for that small amount of money, it was surprising that they filmed it over 30 days. So that was an unusual amount of time to spend filming such a low budget film. Also, there is no Elvis music anywhere in the movie. And even the Elvis film marathon that our Bruce Campbell Elvis turns on in his room, by the way, on an old-timey TV, no modern TVs there. It's not actually clips from Elvis movies, because to license any of those songs or any clips from any of those movies would have cost about $250,000. It would have cost about half the budget to get one song. So they just didn't do it. So they used stock videos of people whose bodies looked sort of like Elvis's and just didn't show their faces clearly. I thought that was interesting.
I can't believe they didn't just use AI. That's totally kidding. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
A prequel titled Bubba Nosferatu, Curse of the She-Vampires has been in the works for years, and it's mentioned at the end of the movie, and I was like, where's that movie? So I would like to see it if it ever gets made and released.
Nice.
I have a bunch of depressing facts about elder abuse that maybe nobody needs to hear right now.
Lay it on us anyway.
Oh, okay. So I'll just do a couple because they're just really sad. Around 1 in 6 people 60 years or older has experienced some form of abuse in the past year. 2 in 3 staff at nursing homes and care facilities report that they have committed abuse. These are people answering anonymous surveys saying like, yes, I have abused someone in the past year, 2 out of 3. So that's really disturbing.
But when you got to think about how they would even define abuse, because there are people to this day that will make the argument that, spanking your kid isn't abuse. Yep. It's so my question is, if they don't think that certain things are abuse, I mean, you think that number would be even higher probably.
Yeah. 3 in 3.
It would have to be higher. Like anybody who's ever taken a survey at your job, when they say it's anonymous, everyone goes, no, it's not. They're tracking us. So that number is way higher.
Yeah. Yep. Rates of abuse of older people increased during the COVID-19 pandemic. And by the way, these figures are from the World Health Organization. Just so I'm citing my sources here. Does not say why. So it could be a deterioration. I'm not saying that word right. Of the mental health of the workers, that they're being more abusive. But I'm also wondering if it had anything to do with the residents' families not being able to visit and check up on them.
Mm.
So they were not as afraid of getting told on. I don't know. We don't have the whys, just the facts here.
Right.
And that the global population of people aged 60 or older will more than double in 2050. So it'll be about 2 billion in 2050.
Wow.
Yeah. So there are just going to be more older people who need to be taken care of by people who will 2 out of 3 times abuse them. That is pretty awful.
Indeed.
And then I've got just some quotes that I wrote down from the movie that struck me as being really sad and really true. Bruce Campbell's character says at one point, everything you do when you're old, everything you do is either worthless or sadly amusing. Jack, when he's talking about Bubba Ho-Tep preying on elderly folks, he can only get a little bit of life energy at a time, but it's just easy pickings. He says the prey is easy, and how true that is for people who abuse the elderly as well. And it just, the movie kind of made me sad in a lot of ways, and it made me like get a little sappy and just think that, like, yes, this is like kind of a fun movie about a mummy, but it's also just a movie that is very explicitly about elder abuse and disuse, just like letting these people rot, throwing them away, letting the whole world forget them. And these 2 guys wanted to reestablish their relevancy. So these 2 guys who thought they were these very famous people, but they did not want to relive their glory days. They weren't trying to sort of rest on their laurels in this moment. They were trying to do something new and good in the present moment, right? Like they wanted to matter right now, not just talk about how they used to matter. They wanted to have agency for the first time in years and years and years. They talk about how they weren't good fathers. You know, that's toward the end, right before they go to fight the mummy. They talk about they weren't good fathers. Both of the real life men, right, JFK and Elvis, they had reputations as like womanizers and partiers. And so you have this really touching moment where they want to matter even if no one else knows it or sees it. And they think that they can redeem themselves for just a small fraction of their past sins by doing something good for their friends at the nursing home. And it's touching. It's sweet. It's a really heartfelt movie, I think.
Well, and what I love about everything that you just said, this goes into all of the most ridiculous dialogue as well. Everything about his dick not working, everything about, it got a little tiny moment of life again. Like, that's what he's looking for. He's looking for that tiny moment of life, just like his dick is, right? And they're talking about their dicks. They're talking about Ho-Tep shitting out souls. And this is my brand right here, dealing with the most human pieces of us, which are our dicks working and shitting and eating and these things. And everything I write tends to come back to this, because this is human at the most human level. And when you talk about they want to matter today, he's not trying to, if he was really Elvis, he's not trying to go hook up with 5 women a day. He just wants his dick to work for like 2 minutes, just to feel that today, not relive those days. And everything in this is so beautifully written to pull the ridiculous, the vulgar, the supposedly inappropriate, and to show that that's what makes us human. And I love that so much. And I think this was my first time watching this, and I have already become completely obsessed with this movie because it is where my writing lives. It is fear of being alone. It is vulgar and inappropriate. It is this really human quality of who am I right now? And I encourage everybody to let go of bullshit of, oh, this movie isn't good enough because they talk about dicks and shit. And that's what humanity is. And I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it's there somewhere.
You're trying to say that humanity's full of dicks and assholes.
And that we should put them together. Is that what you're... Oh, wait, that's different.
No, say metaphoric. You know what? Damn it, James.
I just had to ruin it. I'm sorry.
I would... Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, even going to the father stuff, like, how do you become a father? Your dick works. Like, that's where it starts. And all of this pulls together, and it's manhood in different ways. It's, I can have sex. I have kids I need to take care of. I have regrets. Like, I don't know. This is just so beautifully fucking written. I wish I could write something this good.
Yeah. The camera angles, like the shots, are really excellent. That Last Drive-In article talked about how this movie is a comedy and a horror film, but it's also a Western because of the way they set up so many of the camera angles, like the showdowns in the hallways. Not just the fact that the mummy is stealing the sort of Lone Ranger getup of the one resident, who they call Kimosabi. I think it's because he calls himself that. And, carries toy guns around.
And this all goes into manhood again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Continue, sorry.
And yeah, like, what does it mean to be a man? It's not about sleeping around. It's not about having money. It's about doing the right thing when nobody is there to see you do it.
Yep.
Right.
And we have like that beautiful ending, where both of these men give their lives in service, and it's not any service that will ever be recognized. No one else knew the mummies existed. Anybody who knew was already dead.
Yeah. Well, I was going to add to that, Rebecca, that I don't know if we brought this up or not, but I don't recall us bringing this up. There was at least one character that was cut from the original script, or at least the original push for the film. And I think that the film would be aided even more, not saying to remake the movie, but just originally, if this had been in the film, I think this would have been an additional great discussion to have way before the public was willing to have that discussion, because there are a lot of people in the public who still don't want to have this discussion that, trans people exist.
Yep.
There was going to be a trans character that had transitioned and used to be John Dillinger. So you got that other aspect of, and this kind of gets into the transphobia, as far as there are people whose masculinity, there are people who feel as though their masculinity is threatened by someone else deciding to leave masculinity because they are not comfortable with that type of gender association or things associated with that that gender identity. But I would love that discussion love for that to have been in the film, because I would love to see how that discussion and how that would have been handled at the time, but also because it would have, from every indication, it would have been done respectfully. But how people would be looking at this film now who didn't understand it at the time, because we all have friends who love this movie. I had people who for years were trying to get me to watch it, and I just never had the time, or it was already rented out at the video store. And until you recommended it for the show, I probably would have gone another 20 years without seeing the movie. but yeah, I should have seen it at that time because I think I would have had a much deeper connection to it. Not as obsessed as James is with it now, but a much deeper connection to it, given the conversations that were happening in the film, but not happening in the public.
Yeah. Also, I had to look up who John Dillinger was. So for anyone else who is similarly ignorant, he was a very infamous gangster during the Great Depression. Escaped jail a couple times.
He lived fast and he died young.
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about, age and things like, I would have just loved to see how they would have thrown that in. Like what,
Yeah.
John Dillinger fakes their death. And then, I don't know. That would have been interesting.
It would have been some kind of other conspiracy, which would have been great,
Yeah.
for this mashup. And then the film's mashup of conspiracy theories is reflective of 1970s culture, because it wasn't just, JFK's death. Robert Kennedy was assassinated in 68, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., 68, the Vietnam War, then Watergate in the early 70s. So it was like everyone just became obsessed with conspiracy theories. And it was like each of those conspiracies, even though they had kind of nothing to do with one another, fueled one another,
Right.
Each conspiracy theory made the general public more willing to believe conspiracy theories altogether. For some folks, it's like, oh, well, how can none of these be true, right? Like the odds are that some of them got to be true. And then talking about ridiculous conspiracy theories, and this just made me laugh because of course it did. Donald Trump suggested that Ted Cruz's dad did it, and I laughed
Oh
out
God,
loud.
I forgot about that. Oh my God.
And then he tried, so people kind of were like, did you really just say that? And then his doubling down was, I didn't say it. I'm just saying it's a little weird that they were together. Don't you think it's weird? I'm just saying that he was there, so maybe he did it. He didn't really support his claim, nor did he deny it. It was this very weird, like, word salad of yes, but no, but yes, but maybe. And I was like,
very out of character.
It's like when Pinocchio's trying not to lie in Shrek 3.
That's my followed closely by the Muffin Man, but
there's I have a list of the most prevalent theories for JFK's assassination.
Oh, please. Yes.
Okay, and I'm not saying these were the only ones. These were just sort of the biggest or more widely discussed. Multiple gunmen, which was later disproved, right? Because at one point they're like, oh, there were more shots than those shots. There had, the grassy knoll and everything, the other man. So later disproved, no, it was just Lee Harvey Oswald. Then there was some guy they called the Umbrella Man. And this is maybe one of my favorites. There was a man at this parade, and it was a sunny day, and he had an umbrella. And everybody who saw this photo, they're like, well, that's suspicious. Why did he have an umbrella? So they thought maybe he was like hiding a gun under the umbrella or whatever. And later this guy was tracked down. He had no idea he was a part of any of these conspiracy theories. And I just think that's so funny that he was totally ignorant of being the source of some of those rumors. Of course, we had Cubans suspected. We had Soviets suspected. Lyndon B. Johnson / other government officials, because there were just like tons of the government did it, theories. Then the driver
I call bullshit on that.
Yeah, well, the driver of JFK's car, which that one made me laugh. The CIA did it, the FBI did it. Robert Kennedy he publicly admitted to being worried that it was his fault. He thought that it might be payback because he was going after mobsters. he was trying to, find, arrest, put away mobsters, and he thought it might be retaliation. And then, of course, we have Ted Cruz's dead.
The Zodiac
Most
Killer.
recent.
No, I call bullshit on Lyndon. Nobody else. The rest of the government could have done it, but I've learned way too much about LBJ, and that guy would have fucking told everybody.
Oh God.
It's the same reason that I got depressed when Trump was president, because I decided we must not know there's aliens, because there's no way in fucking hell that Trump could help but tell us about aliens. And Johnson is the same way to me. This guy would make phone calls from his toilet and make people listen to him shit. Like there's no way that he wouldn't be like, hey, I killed that motherfucker. Like he would have fucked up at some point. So Lyndon, I'm crossing off the list.
Look, James,
I want to mention,
they didn't tell Trump about the aliens, so
something I want to mention, just to be like respectful, is that Lee Harvey Oswald also killed a police officer named J.D. Tippit that day. So was not a famous person, but another victim.
Right.
J.D. Tippit, and of course shot John Connolly in the back, the governor, but he lived.
Not the amazing shot he thought he was.
No. And also, in all of the interviews with Jack Ruby, people didn't believe that he was acting alone. And on his deathbed, his brother snuck a tape recorder into the hospital. And on his deathbed, he was like, no, it really was just me. I was just mad because I felt that Oswald embarrassed Texas. And I wanted to.
Jesus, if that isn't a Texas thing.
Yeah. He shamed them. And so he just wanted to get him back. And then there was this huge split between people saying oh, Jack Ruby is a hero, and people being very mad because, of course, Ruby killing Oswald meant, Don, as you said earlier, that no one ever got any answers, which seemed even more suspicious.
And that's where we go with it. If we don't have a way to define something or a way to account for something, it's got to be a conspiracy.
Mm-hmm. Any unanswered questions, right? Even just the fact that no one knows exactly why Oswald did it is going to fuel conspiracies.
Well, I did read his book. I didn't do it, but if I had, here's how I would have done it.
Damn it, James.
And what? You didn't read that? Oh, that was O.J. Simpson. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say that's a different person.
No, I always come back to my theory that Jack the Ripper doesn't exist. Don and I were talking about this earlier today. I believe that it was an early form of newspaper sensationalism, and I think that we hold on to it for the exact same reason. We don't have a definitive look at this, but it was also everywhere. No one could escape it. Jack the Ripper, newspapers were finally affordable, so everybody was getting them, and it was constantly there. You couldn't get away from it no matter where you went. Lee Harvey Oswald, JFK, I mean, was there a bigger news story ever? You couldn't escape this, Yeah, go ahead.
I shouldn't fuel this, but I have another piece of information that might support your Jack the Ripper was just a newspaper selling ploy. And that was that printing had gotten a lot cheaper. So, the public had access to penny dreadfuls.
Yep.
And newspapers had to compete with those.
If you break down the newspaper sales, every time they started slumping, another murder occurred. But also they were all reported differently in rich neighborhoods versus Whitechapel. I don't know. I could go on about this forever, but so I feel like these things where you can't escape the news also build memories, and they build these moments in time of a shared collective. And when there's no right answer, or there feels like there isn't, then it just keeps building on itself forever because people are still thinking about it.
Well, and as you guys were saying earlier, there was no internet, but there was also no easy access. Like right now, anything that happens, anyone can grab their phone out of their pocket and take pictures or video. You know, we see it all the time. So everything surrounding like the assassination of JFK and even right the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald a couple days later, all we have are these grainy black and white photos or videos and not that many of them. So what maybe could be proved or disproved with like modern cameras and, you know, a bunch of bystander videos, like that wasn't a thing.
That'd be so crazy. If everybody out there had their phones out, this would be a very different story.
Yep. So it's just if people do not, and this has always been true, right? Like if people do not have enough information, they will fill in the blanks on their own, and they will do it very confidently. So,
no comment.
Oh, well,
but freaking great movie, and anybody who doesn't watch, who has not seen it, and who doesn't think that they would like to see it, all of those people should see it.
I will say the trailers do not do this movie justice. I watched the trailer and I was like, oh my God, really? This looks horrific. And then I was like 2 seconds in and I was loving it because the opening narration's fucking fantastic. Like everything about this movie is great. And I'm so angry that I watch trailers, and we post trailers whenever I post these episodes. And I've literally been sitting here like, do I want to post a trailer? Maybe I should post a Rickroll. I don't know. I don't want to discourage people from watching this.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to call out about the movie, and this is really just calling out like Lansdale's talents, right? But the storyline follows the classic narrative arc of a supernatural story, you know, where you have this opening and usually it's a new place. He's not in a new place, but I do think that he's coming around to a consciousness he didn't have before. So, excuse me, it's a bit parallel to like moving into a new house that ends up being haunted. And you have weird stuff start to happen. And at first the protagonist is in denial. Then the protagonist accepts it, but the other people around them don't. Then they don't understand it, so they have to do research. And I love that Jack even does the classic move of going to the newspaper files, like hitting the microfiche, you know, not just the research in that book, but translating the graffiti he sees in the bathroom that Bubba Ho-Tep left, that he says, was it Cleopatra does the nasty, or was it Nefertiti does the nasty? I can't remember. And then he goes to, you know, the records. He hits the library, or the I can't remember if it was the library for the newspaper or if it was town hall records. But he goes and does the research, and then they arm themselves just like any good ghost hunter or monster hunter, you know, before the final showdown.
Yeah, when people say do your own research, we mean like this.
Yeah.
We mean actual research.
Yep.
Not just retweeting whatever Elon wrote today.
Or what would be my favorite conspiracy theories, which mattress stores would be my favorite one because it's just so silly. I like conspiracy theories and the way this is done because it handles or includes conspiracy theories that are not harmful. And that's the great thing about most conspiracy theories, right? Most of them are harmful. I believe the government's hiding aliens from us. Or I believe that Bigfoot is here. Or I believe that...
There's nothing wrong with Bigfoot. He's just blurry.
Right. Or I believe, you know, that... or even the people believe things like, oh, we're in a computer simulation, right? Like, you're not harmful. You're not harmful at all. But when you get into things like 8chan and QAnon and stuff like that, it leads to a lot of violence, especially when you start talking about how, you know, there are pizza restaurants where people are using the basement to traffic children, and you end up doing harmful things to people, or do things like, I don't know, try and take over the government, overthrow the government. But most conspiracy theories, harmless, harmless, harmless. It's for fun. I mean, for me, it's for fun because I like looking at the conspiracy theories. But be careful. Cults based on conspiracy theories are not a good thing.
Yeah. But apparently, like, there are so many of them. Like, I kind of want to join the Elvis one now if it's still in existence.
If it's not, start your own.
Like, there's a
Elvis being alive?
Yeah. They're
still around.
There's an interesting YouTube video I found of one of Elvis's employees, like his kind of pack of henchmen or whatever at the time. And it was the night that Elvis learned about JFK's death. And he, woke everyone up. He was really drunk and high already, but he had the maid make pots of coffee. He woke everybody up and had them all watching TV together. And they just like kept watching. And then there was the moment when Lee Harvey Oswald got shot 2 days later. And he was he got really angry. He was a big fan of JFK's, but he got really angry and started yelling about how if anyone ever killed him, he wanted his boys to get to the guy first, that he did not want any assassin of his getting arrested and being able to sit on trial. And started getting like really graphic, like he wanted them to rip out this assassin's eyeballs and just like all these gruesome punishments. And the man in the video says that they were all really surprised. They didn't know that Elvis had apparently spent a lot of time thinking that he would be assassinated. But that got around too, and that helped fuel conspiracy theories that he faked his own death because he knew that people were after him and he had to protect himself and his family.
Oh man. Well, I guess James and I have the same viewpoint on that, which is, Elvis was onto something because I want the same thing. I sent James a text like 2-3 years ago because it was, I'm not sure if you remember this, but the police officer who mistakenly entered the wrong apartment and killed the man in the apartment, and how like not her parents, the victim's brother, I think, hugged her. Yeah, hugged the murderer, and the judge hugged her after she was convicted and then gave her a Bible. And I said, texted James and said, if you ever hug somebody who killed me, I will fucking haunt you.
Yeah.
And he replied back, he's like, the only way I'm going to hug them is so I can make sure I'm close enough to drive a knife in. So,
well, that's
in fairness, I would want you to haunt me though, so that we could still hang out. So that's not real. Like, that's a very confusing deal.
Oh, James, I mean, there are so many people in the South I can haunt. Why would I come and bother you when I could just scare them?
Lame. Still don't want to hang out with me. I understand.
It's all right.
Rebecca, do you have more, or are you ready to move to movie recs? Or
I have a little bit more.
Okay, go for it.
Not a lot more, just a little bit more. Some interesting things about Lee Harvey Oswald. He used to be a Marine, so he was also a veteran. Then he defected to the Soviet Union, where he married a Russian woman. They had a daughter. Then they came back to the US and they had another child. And before he successfully killed JFK, he attempted to kill a retired US Major General named Edwin Walker. And Walker was a huge racist and actually fought against desegregation. Oswald shot at him while he was at home and missed, and the guy just got like some fragments of bullets in his arm or something from it ricocheting off the window. So he failed and then killed someone else.
Well, from a fame point of view, it's a glow up, but overall, yeah.
I survived Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah, but like that, I mean, that would not have been sad if he killed a racist guy, So And then I've just got some stuff. Hotep is an Egyptian phrase that means something like "I come in peace," and I thought it was interesting because in contemporary Black culture, that has become a casual greeting. Thought that was cool. And then I just like looked up for no reason a bunch of Egyptian names in the dynasties mentioned, like those first 17 dynasties, 3100 to 1550 BC. And there's just hoteps all over the place. Mentuhotep was the whole line that ruled. Nephotep was a first dynasty queen. Imhotep, which people will recognize, is the name of the antagonist in the original Mummy movie from 1932, but then also makes an appearance in the Brendan Fraser versions.
Nice.
And I think kind of rolling into movie recs, I haven't done this, but I think it would be fun to have like a whole Mummy marathon and just like watch the 1932 version, watch all the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies, even though the last one is fairly bad. In the last one, his little British son is somehow now American and he has a different wife. That's weird. Watch Bubba Ho-Tep and just make a day of it.
And throw in Mummy on the Orient Express, the Doctor Who episode from 2014, because it's just fun.
Go for it.
All right.
And maybe also Monster Squad.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't usually say this, so sorry, but we have it on DVD, and I wish I had an edited version instead. It's one of those things that, you don't remember this from when you were a kid because this was just the culture you were immersed in, but you watch it now as an adult and you've got some really terrible language, like really hateful language coming from these kids, and it's just casual. And you have all these little kids playing with firearms. And I don't know that you could like edit that out because it's part of the movie, but like this police officer parent just comes home and like throws his loaded gun on the bed, I guess. But the language is troubling in that one. And it would be nice if there were a cleaned up version that we could enjoy without that in it.
There you go. We did an episode on
with
Monster Squad.
Yeah, because I can't remember who brought it up, but we've talked about like even the whole aspect of slut shaming. It's like, oh, what do you mean you're not a virgin? Like, like, and
also like there's like they spy on the one guy's sister, like that sister in question. Like, and that's treated as like a lighthearted thing,
Boys being boys,
Yep. Yep. So yeah. So maybe if you can get an edited version of that, otherwise it'll just be troubling and sad. So.
Yeah, I do a lot of, I guess, with a good number of movies. If I haven't watched them in a while, I'll rewatch them before I watch them with my kid, and then I'll give her some warnings about some things, or if there's something I forget and it comes up, I pause it and talk about, hey, this was one of those things that was, I won't even say tolerated, but it was something that some people accepted, but we were able to learn from these experiences and realize what this is not language that we use anymore. And we shouldn't have used it at that time.
Yep.
But knowing better, we do better. And I did the same thing with
casual about it.
Oh yeah. So there are movies where we will honestly go back and have a discussion about it and talk about acceptable behavior, unacceptable behavior, and even what you may have done in that situation, just to critically think and have a nice discussion after a film.
Another one that
a lot smarter than me. Sorry, go ahead.
I remember loving MacGyver when I was a kid. Like it was one of those grown-up shows that like I felt cool if I was allowed to watch, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so we got a hold of some, DVD collection. And so we put that on one day and we were like, wow, he touches everybody's butts without permission or invitation. Like there's a lot of, again, like I'm going to use the word casual, because it wasn't right. It was just this accepted part of culture or something where it would be totally sort of normal, not fine, but sort of normal if in the 80s and prior, right? You're a woman walking up a set of stairs and the man behind you, casually guides you forward with his hand on your lower back top butt, I will say. Just like this uninvited touching, this physical contact that was almost even seen as, gosh, I don't want to use the word gentlemanly, but like, oh, I'm being courteous. I'm guiding this woman up the stairs to make sure she doesn't fall. And it's like, she's a grown ass woman. She can walk up the stairs by herself. And that's why there's a handrail, but,
yep.
But just, if you like watch shows like that, it's just, we were just really shocked by episode after episode, MacGyver touching women's butts. Like there's one where they're hiding in a barn and they stand up and he just takes it upon himself to brush all the hay off her butt. And it's like, she could do that herself if she wanted to, or you could offer and you can let her say yes or no, so
and all
troubling.
All I would say, and this is not countering that at all I would say is those individuals who come forward and say things like, well, I let him smack me on the butt. You're saying that about a character that you have a parasocial relationship with. If this were a real life situation, you would not tolerate it.
No.
I don't understand why he doesn't help men. He should be helping men too. He should touch their butts.
Yes.
I choose the bear. But I will say this.
This isn't coming out till June. That'll be so outdated. I'm just kidding.
I guarantee you people will still be talking about the bear thing. I choose the bear, but I only choose the bear if the bear is consenting to welcoming me into that place, into that space. Otherwise, I'm not going into the woods. And James knows me. I'm not going to the woods anyway. So you know what? The bear is safe.
I kind of want somebody to make a TikTok now just exploring MacGyver touching people's butts, because, and I'm dead serious about this, because I do think there's a lot of social value in explaining why this shouldn't have been okay and how that's changed. And it sounds crazy, but I bet it would get a ton of hits too. So you could monetize and help people learn something.
And
like Zach Morris's trash.
It doesn't still happen, right? It's just
absolutely.
It's not treated so casually anymore. And that's been a change in the past 10 years, because when I was like waiting tables and bartending, like people touched me without my permission all the time. And the 2 times that it went way past the line and I told on them, which was not something you did in like 2004, I was then embarrassed by the reaction, right? Like I sort of regretted saying anything, because then I was the one embarrassed by the fallout, not the person who did it.
Yep.
So I'm glad things are changing. That's all just me saying I'm glad things are changing. They're not changing fast enough and they're not changing enough, but I am very happy that like I can walk up a set of stairs without the expectation of a strange man just touching my butt for no reason. And I'm sorry, I got us way off track from Bubba Ho-TEP.
You're good.
No, you didn't. No, you did not. Look, there's a firmly held belief in these guys who call themselves alpha males and L sigma males, that they should still be doing. I mean, I guess that's a conspiracy, is that women act this way because they want to be touched. Fellas, unless somebody explicitly says they want to be touched, leave them alone.
Yep.
And I'm saying fellas because I know the crowd I'm talking about.
Yeah. You know who your audience is in this moment.
Oh no. Our if they're listening to us this far into the show.
Those people aren't still here. You're right.
No, they're not here.
They probably never were.
Just in case there's somebody who still believes that stuff.
All right, Rebecca, do you have any more movie recs?
I have a movie rec that has nothing to do with this.
Yeah, cool.
But for Christmas, I bought my husband Joel a scratch off horror movie poster.
Oh.
And so he's got like 100 movies on it. And you get like a little pictorial clue. And I think you might get a director as well. So you might think you know what it is, and that may or may not be true. And then you scratch that one off, and then that's the movie you have to watch, so that by the end you watch all of them. And so we just started it last night, and we watched the 1960s Vincent Price Mask of the Red Death.
Nice.
Okay.
And it was so messed up and like in some ways just really funny and ridiculous. And it's not just the Mask of the Red Death. They take not all, because there are too many, obviously, but they have all these references to other Poe stories, including like a woman getting pecked to death by a raven. Not that happened in Poe, but just like the raven had to come in, and the pit and the pendulum comes in, and Hop Toad comes in, and the most fucked up thing about that movie though is that so Hop Toad is a little person, and apparently they couldn't find a female little person because his significant other in the movie is a 5-year-old girl who is very clearly a 5-year-old girl, but they gave her gets worse. They gave her the voiceover of like a 40-year-old woman.
Oh my God.
It is spectacularly messed up. And even if it's just for that scene where he is having a conversation with this 5-year-old kid who is supposed to be his wife with a 40-year-old voice, spectacular.
I have panel ideas churning in my head, Don. Anyway, holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, it's something. Like, it's really something to watch.
All right.
The only thing I can think about that would be Hercules in New York. When Arnold Schwarzenegger's English accent was so thick that they dubbed it over. And it's great if you just want to laugh. And the English dub over it's as if they were trying to do an impersonation of how Arnold should sound in English.
That's hilarious.
And there's no other way. Yeah, it's like there's this one point, I will never forget this line. I might even be butchering it because it's been like 30 years since I've seen it. But he's Hercules. He's been sent down to Earth by Zeus's punishment, but he hasn't stripped him of his, strength yet. But there's this one point where he walks in, like there's this woman that he's attracted to, and he's trying to talk to her, and another man walks in the room. He says, "Is this your lover?" I'm like, who is the voice actor who did this? Because it almost sounded like Cience or Simon.
Wow.
Is this your lover?
If your Cience says that, you've got problems. That's probably what that 5-year-old girl had.
Probably.
And, Jesus. All right.
Anyway, so yeah. Sorry, I don't have anything more serious than that. Just do a mummy movie marathon. Include Bubba Ho-Tep. And then if you want to watch something super weird, go for that. Look up that Vincent Price movie from the 60s.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So normally I do a double feature. Today's is not exactly a double feature because I don't think you should watch them together so much as this is what it reminded me of. I love this take on Jack Kennedy. I think it's hilarious. I think it's weird, and I think it's heartfelt and human all at once. And so I want to go with my favorite rendition of any telling of JFK, and I'm going to suggest the show 11/22/63, based on the Stephen King book, one of my absolute favorite Stephen King books. I adore this story. I love the miniseries. I love the book. And I just love that it's a totally different telling because it's about time travel to stop Oswald and other things, but it's done in a very different way because it's King, and that's what he does. It's also, I think, maybe 11,000 pages. I'm not really sure. No, it just, all of his books just feel that way to me. Anyway, all right, Don.
My 11,000 movie Rex.
Yeah, let's go with 112,263. Go.
Jeez, this is getting like, whose line is it anyway? Because the movies do matter, but the number doesn't. Slither, Big Trouble in Little China, Society, Dawn of the Dead, and if I mention Dawn of the Dead, I have to mention Return of the Living Dead. Renfield, the entire Evil Dead series, I would say, just it's more Bruce. Jennifer's Body, Cast a Deadly Spell, Dog Soldiers, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, Mystery Men, Frankenhooker, Cabin in the Woods, Toxic Avenger, The Stuff, Eight-Legged Freaks, I already said Return of the Living Dead, Little Shop of Horrors, Inception. Do not laugh at this next one, James. Team America, They Live. And because there is this other question about what is real, aside from the Inception reference, I would go with Memento, because you're talking about somebody who's going through this, the sense of being left behind, and that he has to rebuild this identity that he is, and he believes he is, and other people accommodate him.
All right, cool. Well, I suppose that brings it back to you, Rebecca. Where can people find you online, buy your books, support Undertaker Books, and anything else you want to throw in there?
All right, thanks. So social media, Facebook, Twitter, which I'm still calling Twitter, Instagram. Yes. My website is RebeccaCuthbert.com, so you can find me over there. Please look up Undertaker Books and buy all of our books. We're just going to keep putting out books for everyone, and they're going to be fantastic. We are signing some great authors, and we are pumped about our lineup, and we are booked into 2025. So we are serious, and we are working hard.
Beautiful. One more thing I want to throw in. On your website, occasionally you interview other authors, and I would like you to just talk about the thought process behind that really fast, or how you want to describe it to people, because I think a lot of us have websites that we kind of just throw things on, and yours has actual thought behind it by bringing on others, and I would like to push it so people go check it out.
Thanks. Yeah, I have a blog that's connected to my website, and it's called Writer's Block and the Ticking Clock. And it's about a lot of different things with writing, and the kind of overall theme is, fitting it in and how to sort of like emotionally manage being a writer. And some of that is like how you handle your own emotions, and some of that is how you interact with other people and how you can be supportive, and every once in a while what not to do. And if I see a cool project going on, I might interview the author or the organizer of that. But my point with the blog, and I don't have any kind of schedule with it, but I often just think what could be helpful to people, or what could be useful, or what could be interesting to other writers and to readers as well.
Awesome. And while we're on that subject, can you tell people what Creep This Way is?
Creep This Way is a craft and memoir text. It is quite short. It's only about 100 pages. And Christopher Ryan, who is the publisher at Seamus and Nunzio Productions, approached me last fall And he said, "Hey, you're pretty new, but you're pretty busy. So I think you have an interesting story, and I think you should tell it, and I think you should write a book. Do you want to write that book?" And I was like, "Okay." And so we did. So it is not a book about how to be a famous writer or how to be a rich writer, because I am not those things. But it is a book about kind of how to get your foot in the door and how to do things like, how do you handle rejections without getting depressed, and how do you meet other writers, and how do you improve your craft, and what does it mean to try new things, and what should you take as good advice and what should you leave behind because it's a horrible misconception. So just things that I hope will help people.
I loved that it's easily digestible. Like you said, it's only like 100 pages. Every chapter is just a couple pages, but then there's always like this little piece afterwards of like how you can apply this. And I just thought that it worked really well as kind of a roadmap for navigating the extra pieces that go with being a writer these days. I think a lot of us came into this because we want to write, not because we want to market, and not because we want to be on social media, and not because we want to table sell or whatever else. And I just thought you did a really good job of hitting all of these various things. And while it's not a deep exploration, I think if somebody didn't go to cons ever before, or they didn't really interact with Twitter universe, these things just kind of open the door and make them go, hey, here's another piece of it. And I just thought that was a really cool concept. So I wanted to throw this in at the end, even though you sort of mentioned it at the beginning. But
thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Don. Do you have anything left to say before we go?
Well, I've got ding dongs, paydays, a whole box of Baby Ruths.
You're saying let's get decadent is what you're saying.
He's saying we'll live deliciously. Oh, wait, wrong movie. All right, that wraps it up for another week. As always, I am James Sabata.
And hey, we got a bad bug problem in this place, man.
But we'll still see you next week here at thenecronomid.com.
TCB, baby.